I do want to mention this Planned Parenthood video situation again before we get into those apologetic quotes. And there's going to be a new video every week for probably the next 8 or 9 weeks. So get ready for this. See how much the media tries to ignore it. But it can't be ignored. This is brutal. This is barbaric. Planned Parenthood not only needs to be defunded, it needs to be prosecuted. And as I say, we're going to revisit this. But I want to point out one thing with regard to these videos, because it's quite obvious. It's been obvious for many years, but it's absolutely even more obvious now that literally we're killing people in the womb. And on every college campus that I go to and present, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, almost on every college campus, you get a question about evil. And sometimes it's a question relating to the evil of God, apparently, in the Old Testament. You know, God kills the Canaanites. Why does God kill the Canaanites? And we've been through on this program several times the answers to that. But usually the people that bring this objection up are pro-abortion. I mean, they're for abortion. They're for so-called abortion rights. And I just can't help but point out the inconsistency here. The question goes like this that I like to ask people. Why is it that when God plays God in the Old Testament and kills people, he's immoral? But when you play God here on earth and kill people, you call that a moral right? Can you justify that for me? I mean, why is it that God can't play God, but you can play God? Why is it that God is immoral when he plays God, but it's perfectly within your moral rights as a human being to kill other people? You play God. That's just a moral right. Why is that? Of course, the truth of the matter is God, and he can kill people anytime he wants. He is under no moral obligation to keep people here on earth for 80 years. He can kill you at 2 or 82 or anywhere in between. That's up to him. He's the creator of life. He can take life, and he's the only one that can resurrect it and bring you into the next life. You see, actually, according to God's perspective, people don't really die. They just change location. They go from this life to the eternal life, and God can take you into that eternal life at any point. Actually, technically, according to Christianity, you have eternal life the second you believe. Jesus says in John 5:24, he who believes is passed from death into life. So you don't get eternal life when you die. You get it when you believe. But you understand my point. When your physical life goes away, you're ushered in to the eternal perspective, the eternal life, in a way that isn't as completely apparent to you as it is here. Yeah, you may be saved now, but you really don't understand completely what you're going to experience when you die. Of course, Paul says that we now see dimly. We don't see it completely. We don't quite understand what we're going to experience. But it's totally God's right to take you into the next life whenever he wants to. But again, I just want to point out the inconsistency. I also want to point out that these people who say people have a moral right to abort their children, where are they getting rights from? Rights don't come from men. Rights can only come from God. If rights come from man, which man? And if that man goes away and a new man comes into power, do your rights change? No, of course not. A right is something you have regardless of what anybody believes, what anybody says about it. There is no right to abortion. You'd have to have a God who would want you to abort and would say it's a good thing to abort. You say, well, half of all pregnancies, God is the greatest abortionist of all. I mean, nature is the abortionist. A lot of people have miscarriages. Well, of course, it's under God's prerogative to decide when, as I just said, somebody lives or dies. It's not under our prerogative. Yes, of course, nature can create abortions. When I use the word nature, I'm, of course, meaning ultimately that God controls all things. But look, if nature burns down a school, does that mean you have the right to burn down a school? If lightning hits a school and it burns up, does that mean you have a right to go burn down a school? No, of course not. Just because nature does it, quote unquote nature, doesn't mean you have a right to do it. So the argument is completely misplaced. But we're going to come back to this issue, and you need to be diligent, I think, in contacting your representatives, your senators, the president about this. This needs to end. Planned Parenthood shouldn't get a dime of your tax money. Abortion should never be paid for by the feds. Really feds, you. And they need to be prosecuted, not just defunded.